Hashem Svasai Tifsach Chofia Gitval Sacha. We're now in the 8th Perek of Shoftim. Just to have a clarity, in the last Perek, it was the two head of Midian, the generals, Orev and Ze'ev, that were killed by the people of Ephraim. Ephraim was not commanded by Gidon, but as we mentioned, Gidon, who lowered himself and really was modest and looked at himself as the small shevet of Menashe, he rose in power and he was able to be the leader of the people of Ephraim, not because he commanded them, but because he's the leader of the whole nation. And so Hashem was able, to set the stage in a different way than Gideon would have ever envisioned, because the people of Ephraim were much, on some way, they were lower in the hierarchy of power. Now, they did kill the Orev and Ze'ev, but just to be clear, they were not commanded by Gideon. Now, why is that significant as we jump into the next Perek? Because in Perek Ches, what we have is that the people of Ephraim are complaining, and they're saying, "Ma davar hazeh asita lanu? How could you do this to us? Levilti kros lanu, you never called us. I don't care if you're intimidated by us. I don't care if we weren't in your plan. We are warriors, and how could you do this? How could you go and fight Midian?" And they were really angry. Vayiribun ito b'chazka, and they get angry with him very strongly. They give him rebuke in a very strong way. Now, here is one of a big Musar Haskel, something that we all can take from this, and this is how he responds. How do we respond when people come at us in a very strong way? They're telling us we did something wrong, so what can we do? And so here is what Gideon does. By Yomer Aleihim, he says to them, Me'asita ata kachem halotov ololos Ephraim imtzir Aviezer. This is a very famous line in Tanakh, and that is, what are you saying? In a very sweet, calm way, he says, what have I done as compared to you? The small part of Ephraim is even greater than the big part of me. Biyadechem natan Elokim esarei Midian. Because of your hands, you were able to accomplish, you were able to kill Orev and Ze'ev. Ma yacholti aso kachem. I can't do anything compared to you. Az rafta rucham ha'elav b'dabro hadavar hazeh. And when he spoke to them in this way, and in this tone, and in this respect that he's clearly giving to them, which, we know that, he has this real modesty, but the way that he's speaking was able to calm them down. And he could have created some sort of civil unrest between Shvatim, but he doesn't. And as a result, the whole thing disappears. And they walk right off into the sunset in a happy way, and he is able to overcome another hurdle as a leader. Now, getting back to the story, so what happens? Now, I don't think that it is I think another way that you can interpret the next part of the story, which we're jumping right back into the war, is that how is it that Gideon has the power to be able to do this with his 300 merry men? And perhaps it is because of, again, Achdus. He really is the leader trying to hold everyone together and giving everyone respect. And so when you have Achdus, Hashem, continues to be on our side. And what ultimately happens is he comes to Yarden, he crosses it, he takes his men, and they are very, very, they're thirsty. So he says to the people of Sukkos that he sees, okay, can we have some bread? Sukkos, again, I think that it's no wonder that it's a hint back to what happens in the Midbar during the time when we were first, recognized as a nation, and we were living in Sukkos. And he says to them, we are really tired. We've been fighting after Zebach with Salmuna, and as we're doing this for you guys. And so what ultimately happens is that they go against him. And they say, well, have you captured Zevach and Salmuna? If you haven't, then why should we be giving bread to your army? Now remember, he just put out perhaps a civil war. This is not Erlich behavior for any Jew to deny another Jew some bread and water. And Gideon says, I swear that when Zevach and Salmuna, when I beat them, I'm going to thresh your bodies, Bekotei Hamidbar, with desert thorns. You are in big trouble. And then he goes to the next place, Penuel, right? Panukel, face with Hashem. Okay, what's happening here? And he makes the same request to them, and they say the same thing about Sukkos. What in the world? And he says, Beshuvi b'shalom, when I come back with shalom, etzotzet migdal hazeh, I am going to tear down your tower. The things that you hold dear, I am going to tear down because you have shown no regard for the Bnei Yisrael. And this is not the way Jews act. We know, in fact, that is the reason why Lo Yavo Ammon and Moab v'Kal Hashem. We don't accept the people of Moab and Ammon into our genetic makeup because they didn't give us bread and water in the Midbar. But not Ammonis and Moabis, not the women, because the women were not responsible for that decision. Now, ultimately, this is not good behavior, and we move on, and Zevach and Salmana are eventually captured and killed, and their men are captured and killed, and we are successful, and it is amazing, Baruch Hashem, Zevach. So Zevach and Salmona, they take flight. We're able to capture a lot of their men, but ultimately Gideon captures Zevach and Salmona, the two kings of Midian, and their whole army gets thrown into a panic. And what does he do? Now it says, Vayashav Gideon ben Yoash min al melchama. So Gideon, the son of Yoash, comes back from the war. Why are we calling him by his name again? Well, perhaps to suggest, again, he is small in the eyes of Sukkos and small in the eyes of Penuel because, maybe it's his stature, maybe it's what Shevet he's from, but they certainly did not treat him like he was one of their own. He was treated, him and his men were not treated very as though they were family. And so it's highlighting, well, Gideon has a family, and he has a Shevet, and it wasn't yours. But let's continue and see what happens. So they capture somebody, Ben Yelkad Na'ar Ma'anshe Sukkos. They get one of the people from Sukkos, and they ask to write down all of the Zikanim, the 77 Zikanim that are in his city. And he does that. What's interesting is that they took a random person, and the random person knew about the Zikanim. So on some level, the Bnei Yisrael are in a high plane with regard to who they know. They know who are the Gedolim in the place. They have a structure that perhaps is impressive because just a random person knows. You ask a random person, so who's the president? So but do you know? Okay, who's the Secretary of State? Who are the Supreme Court justices? So here. They asked a random kid, and the kid knows exactly the 77 elders, and he writes them. They write them down, and he calls, and he doesn't realize that he's writing them into their death, but he calls the people of Sukkos, and he says, "Here you go. We captured Zevach and Salmona." That's who said, "Oh, did you capture Zevach and Salmona? Maybe we shouldn't give let's not waste the bread on people that aren't successful yet." And he takes the elders of the city, and he does exactly what he says. And he punishes the people of Sukkos exactly the same way with those thorns, and then he goes to Penuel and he tears down the tower and he kills the people in the town exactly as he had promised. Now it was very extreme, but what he's setting is a precedent because he's saying there is no such thing as not allowing famished people. We are Bnei Yisrael. We all care about each other. Everyone has a responsibility in a war. Some people are going to fight. Some people are going to support the fighters. Some people are going to daven. Some people are going to learn. Everyone has a responsibility. We don't go through a war where you just sit and say, well, when you win, then we'll support you. That's not the way Jewish people work. To the degree where HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows for him to kill the people that said something like this. Now, they didn't necessarily kill right away, but perhaps this is setting a precedent that is such an important, valuable lesson for the people. And for that reason, he is allowed to do what he does. And then so that is with the people. That is the internal conflict that he has from internal with the Bnei Israel. But now he goes to Zebach and Salmuna, and he says, "Oh, so where are the people that you killed? The people that you killed at Tabor, what were they like?" And they said, "Well, they just look like you, like the son of a king." Okay. And so what does he say? And now he's teaching. So first he taught the Bnei Israel, be brothers. And then he says to the people of Zevach and Salmuna, Achai b'nei imihem. They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. And as Hashem lived, if you would have spared them, I wouldn't be killing you. But because you didn't, I'm going to kill you. And so he's suggesting, and again, this is Ladoros, this is for generations. We are all part we're the same mother. You hurt one, you hurt us all. And if you spare us, that's a good thing. But if you don't, just watch out. Now he tells his son, his Yeser, who's his son, his oldest, you go kill him. But he can't do it. He's just, ki yareh, he's afraid, ki odenu na'ar. He's not old enough. He's not in the position to be able to do it. And so for that reason, which again highlights the fact that Gideon is amazing and he is very strong and he has the right values, but that doesn't necessarily translate into his children being able to follow exactly in his footsteps. And that's going to be significant in a moment. But he isn't. He's a na'ar. A na'ar who's someone who's still in the growing position. He hasn't fully been able. And it's highlighting that just because Gideon himself is so strong doesn't mean that anybody around him, including his own children, are on his level. And Zebach and someone is saying, no, you know what? Let a real man kill us. And so he does. He kills them, and he takes the gold that are on the necks of their camel, and he says to the people who fought, and to the people who recognize that Gideon fought over and did a great job. So all the Bnei Israel, what do they say to Gideon? They say, please, Mashal Banu Gamata, just be the leader. Gam banecha, and your children, gam ben banecha, you be the shofet. Let's do this. How about for generations? You showed us exactly what it means to be a king. Mishal Banu is not actually Meloch Banu. It's rule over us, not be a king over us, but it basically is saying we want you and your ancestors to rule over us. Gam Hoshiatzanu miad midyam, because you saved us. You showed us everything that we need to know. You showed us the way that it is to be an Erlich Jew. You showed us success. You showed that you know how to do the Yad Hashem. You're the real deal. We want you forever. Now, why would that be a good thing? So on the one hand, that would be an amazing thing, because this is what the Jews really need. We need continuous leadership. Every time they don't have a good leader, we go through that galgal. We go through the cycle of what it means of Shoftim. That is not helpful. So it really would be helpful to have the continuity. On the other hand, we just saw that Gideon's son is not exactly like Gideon, and people. Let's say there is going to be even worse than that. Right now he's a na'ar, but let's say they're going to be within the generation someone who's not exactly appropriate. That is not going to help, and that's going to be a real detriment to the Bnei Israel. Hashem is choosing the Shoftim based on their own merits, and Gideon came from his own merit. He himself was amazing. So we can't go. The Bnei Israel are not up to the point where it could be that father bequeaths it to his son, and it's not going to go in a Yerusha. But also, we have this idea that each one of the Shvatim are very sensitive. We started off the Perek with Ephraim being very sensitive. You didn't include us. And then we have Sukkos and Penuel who are like, you're not really one of us. So if you win, great, we'll back you. If not, there is this level of Klal Yisrael having to jive all together. And so if you give it to one Shevet, we're not allowing for there to be the development of each Shevet coming to the table. And what we said was that there was going to be a shofet from basically every Shevet except for Shimon. It was going to happen. And so what we don't want here is we don't want it to be that it's just going to be from Gidon. I guess it would just be from Menashe, and that's how it would develop. We have the concept of having many Shvatim for a good reason. Each one brings something else to the table, and each part of Klal Yisrael is very important. So Gidon says, no, I am not going to. Only Hashem rules over you. It's not on my cards. It's not my responsibility. That's not what it's going to be. Hashem is going to rule over you. And then Gidon says to them, I have a request to make. Each one of you give the earring, the small amount that you got from the Mijanim, because the Mijanim had golden earrings. And the Tanakh says that the Yishmaelim, the Mijanim were Yishmaelim. Where else do we see that the Mijanim, the people from Mijan, were also considered the Yishmaelim? So if you go back all the way to the story with Yosef, and when Yosef was sold, it was the same kind of thing. Using the terms interchangeably. Which is just interesting because, again, highlighting the idea of Yosef with the brothers and the jealousy. Everyone has got to get a part in this, otherwise it doesn't work. And we certainly do not appreciate the idea of, again, the Sukkos and Penuel, that people wouldn't give to their brothers and they would torture their brothers or not support their brothers. We don't believe in that. So again, all of those things, it's so deep. What Tanakh is really telling us in the story, and they do that, they give it. But this is also reminiscent of an Egel Zahav, because it doesn't work very well. He makes something and he takes something and he creates. He takes 1,700 shekel of gold, and in addition to the crescents and the pendants and all these different things that he got from Mijan, and he makes this ephod, this gold, and he sets up this the thing in Ophrah. And unfortunately, the Bnei Israel, right after he sets it up, they go off the derech. And it was not good. Every time you start to have some concrete representation with gold, it turns negative. You can't, gold and Klal Yisrael just seem to have their triggers for one another. Perhaps they're triggers for all society, but it's not very good. All of a sudden, they're going off the derech and they are no longer with Hashem, but now they have other things to be worshiping, and it's not a good thing. Now, on the other hand, Midian, they don't rise their head again. The land is tranquil for 40 years in Godon's time. So if you think about it, they were successful in their war. For 40 years, there's peace and tranquility. And so what is Gidon, who's now called Yerubbaal, what does he do? Vayashav b'veiso. He goes back to his house. Is that a good place for a leader to be, in his own home? Absolutely not. It certainly is not where it needs to be, but perhaps he retired, meaning like he tried his best. I gave this all I got. The Bnei Israel are, it is what it is. Even the best of leaders, there's just so much that you can do. And Gidon had 70 sons. He had many wives. He also had, concubines, and one of them gave him a son, and that son is Avimelech. And Gidon dies at a ripe old age. He had Seva Tova. He's a good man, and he did good things. And he's buried with his father in Ophrah. And then ultimately, when he dies, the Bnei Israel, now they're full-fledged into the Baalim, into Avodah Zarah, and they don't remember. V'lo zachru Bnei Israel es Hashem. Hashem, they don't remember. How could they not remember all the things that you do? But it's just human nature. And all the enemies, they don't remember how much Hashem saved them from all their enemies. But not only that, they don't remember the chesed, they don't do a chesed with Gidon. I mean, could you believe this? But yeah, in many ways we have the concept of Hakar Satov, being appreciative of what you do. We're Yehudim, and part of that is that we are thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what He does. And when you don't, it takes away. Now, what is one of the major ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us to have Hakar Satov? Kibbud Avayim. When you are respectful of your parents and you realize that your parents are meshutav, they partnered with you in order to be where you are, then through that you can develop more of a Hakar Satov, appreciation for Hashem. And it's a concrete representation in this world, what would help you to recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They do not recognize Yerubbaal, Gidon, as their quote-unquote father in this situation, the intermediary to Hashem. And ultimately, they don't recognize Hashem. Everything gets forgotten, which is such a negative midah. Again, that's exactly what he fought against. Have respect, have thankfulness, Sukkos and Penuel. We're fighting your war for you. Like, be thankful, be respectful. But it all goes down, and we will see what happens in the next Perek.